go.
Let's just do it. Let's do the podcast. Welcome to Long Live Podcast. I'm James Rinwaters, your frequent host, and I'm joined with my good friend Jordan Redworth. And tonight we're going to be talking about the power of the DIY music scene, music ethic. My mistake, and the DIY music scene. So both of them. We'll be talking about what it is, how we got into it, how it shapes like our perception of music. What it feels like to get involved musically in these projects as well. So yeah, firstly, as I said, I was going to ask you like how you got into the whole thing.
Well, I was kind of playing in a lot of bands at like a young age, like really small school bands and stuff.
Yeah.
And like during one of our practices, we had like a teacher come along, and he gave us 2 CDs of like a big list of like just DIY kind of screamo heavy bands and stuff. So we kind of found it through that, and then started Emmett Kelly and then just like through friends and stuff, we all just found loads of different bands and
Awesome. I mean, I'll link Emmett Kelly in the description. Some of their stuff because it's really fun. It's fun to play, and it's crazy how young you guys were when you were like playing with like Platform 5 and Ashford and stuff. I thought that was fucking awesome, you know. And you sort of just see these guys like as like very young people just go for it and just like you know. So how would you separate the DIY music ethic from like the sort of the hegemonic normal sort of typical music ethic?
I mean, it's all kind of, you know, like, as the DIY implies, it's all do it yourself. So generally, your music is a bit more raw, and it's just kind of all really put in by yourself. You know, you're not gonna have really clean, crisp kind of sounds, but it's all like kind of raw emotion. You know? Yeah.
And I find the ethic can be like a little off-putting for people that aren't quite involved in the scene to begin with. Like for me to begin with, I was really into like clean, polished music a lot when I was like 17, 18. And then we sort of became friends, and you sort of showed me this other world of bands, and it was quite surprising how it was just this immediate kind of you know. This actually clicks more the more you listen to it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Because it feels like real, you know, as opposed to like some sort of manufactured, labeled kind of like product that industry is selling to you, which is kind of the main part. So it's very punky in core, and then obviously you have power violence bands, and you have like, but it even goes into like noise music and electronics and stuff like that.
You have like lo-fi hip hop artists that are doing like DIY stuff. It's kind of really influenced everywhere.
It's really interesting actually, isn't it? Because you find you sort of find that like the DIY sort of scene has become far more sort of initiated to like present culture through the sort of democratization of like music equipment. So I guess it isn't just like it isn't just like you know, like power electronics and punk anymore. It's like hip hop and it's like bedroom pop and stuff like that. So that's an interesting thing. But I think the roots were often founded in like the sort of, you know, the noise rock bands and stuff. People, you know, like the sort of the Sonic Youths of the world that kind of like, you know, would just play on tapes. I mean, maybe like you'd say, you know, Foo Fighters were kind of had that thing as well when they were talking about like, you know, Dave Grohl just like recording on tapes or whatever, which I found pretty cool. Yeah. And how old are you when you like performed Emmett Kelly? Like,
I think it was like 16. Yeah, like 15, 16 we started.
Yeah, you're playing.
Our bassist was like 13, 14. So
that was the thing I was just like. Because you weren't just like, you were playing with adults, right? You were playing with fucking adults, and Emmett Kelly, if people haven't heard them, or you know, people haven't clicked the link, they're like, you know, like power bands, very fast, very heavy, very just almost like a spiritual kind of just getting it all out in your face.
Yeah.
Just make sure the audio's on. Yeah, so. And yeah, it's a real breath of fresh air for people that were like, people that are kind of bored with the same manufactured kind of metalcore and all these sorts of scenes that come out. So I thought, but you were playing with adults, and I find that crazy. And you weren't just playing at like a sort of like a local pub. You were playing at like a really like a pristine, like not pristine, but like a proper gig. You know, like at a proper place in Ashton,
just like an established DIY venue. They put on like a lot of really big kind of good shows. So
yeah, right.
We got to play with a lot of cool bands, which was really nice as well.
Yeah. Can you name some?
Yeah. So like we played with a few local bands like Manhands and Human Junk. We played with this band from the Netherlands called Slaken Gang.
Okay.
And yeah, like I think there was a few others as well, but yeah, I can't remember the names. Yeah, like I mean, Platform 5 just had loads of good shows on all the time.
Yeah,
and a really good scene there
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I was only there once, and I went to see a beatdown show when
So
maybe I didn't get the proper taste of it, but you know, things were sort of changing by then anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
Manhattan broke up, and then and the Lich aren't together anymore. Literally another Kentish English sort of DIY bandcamp band. Well, they like if you want to call them a bandcamp band, but yeah, I mean so it is interesting. So yeah, I mean, like you were playing at like 16. Your bassist was playing at 13.
Yeah.
Who were your main like inspirations? Would you say? Because you can I can sort of pick out a few things in your sort of music. I can pick out kind of noise rock. I can pick out sort of power violence and like black and punk and
like I think our first initial kind of influence was Page 99. Like we wrote a song that was like really heavily inspired off of In Love with an Apparition, like, and then after that we just discovered more and more bands. So then we found like Orchid and Jerome's Dream and
yeah, I love Jerome's Dream. It's fucking awesome.
I think like eventually kind of each song was almost like inspired from a different kind of DIY screamo band. But I think like overall kind of Orchid and Jerome's Dream were the real and like Page 99.
Yeah. And there is something very there's something very powerful about that music when you first showed me. It was really, I really want to stress how much of a breath of fresh air it is when you're so used to the rigmarole of manufactured music, and how it can really sort of like those sorts of emo violence bands really kind of not only speak something real in their sort of delivery, in their sort of in their composition, but also their production. So not just the content, but their style. In which it really is just like this kind of opening up to like sort of expression where the power is given to the artist, and I feel like a lot of a lot of bedroom pop and hip hop does tend to emulate that kind of sort of feeling of pure expression. Though a lot of it can tend to for me at least, converge more towards kind of like trying to imitate manufactured music, as opposed to using the concept of manufactured music for its own as its own expression, I suppose.
I think there is like a very fine line between, but yeah, I get what you mean though. Like it's kind of very, I feel like a lot more kind of emotionally connected to a DIY musician, knowing that they're doing it more for the joy of doing it and like it's what they want to do, as opposed to being kind of told by someone this is how to make a pop song and this is what you've got to do.
Right, this is how you mix and this is how you master. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, I can talk about my own influences from Wilmstone, and Wilmstone's my band. Play with Jack, my flatmate, who I've had a podcast here before, and then Rick's our guitarist and Manny's our vocalist, and we know we're lucky enough to sort of have a practice space where we live, which is really awesome. But you know, sort of taking in the sort of DIY, I really sort of understood the power of being able to just do what you want when you want, and ignoring these sort of sentiments of oh, but it's not polished enough, no, but it's not this, you know. We had this guy, I was, before COVID struck, I was organising a bunch of DIY bands to play in the library, which I thought would be a very funny idea for a gig, and someone messaged me saying, oh yeah, I've got some bands, and then he shared me some bands, and they were like this really cheesy, like punky poppy kind of music, and then he began saying, you know, talking to me about getting it properly recorded, and I was listening to these bands and thinking like, what's the word?
It's not like soul.
No soul. That's the word. There's no soul in it, and then he began sort of advertising this guy in America who could master tracks for $75 a track, and I'm like, that's fucking ridiculous. It's like, it was like, I had to look into mastering just to see what was so important, and it really is making these absolute tiny adjustments to just give it that extra 1%.
Yeah.
And if you've got a 10-track album, that's $750, and you don't even know if it's going to come out good, and you don't even know if you're going to notice the difference. And the question is, like, why do these weird, arbitrary standards matter in music? And is it just because of the way the industry works and how we've been, like, hypodermically fed these sorts of notions of how to make music properly or whatever? Because,
that's it, yeah.
you know, and he was this guy was a bit insulting of the music that we were making. I was sending him inspirations, like, you know, stuff that you showed me, like Squirm and stuff, and he was like, wow, it sounds like it was recorded on a phone. And I'm like, it sounds like nitty gritty, noisy music in production and composition, which is exactly the way it should sound. And not only that, the way in which it's made gives it a soul.
That's it.
That's the thing, man. I mean, like, I guess I'd say, you know, I think we can both agree that, like, it's to be sold this sort of weird notion of how music should be, in terms of how you know, whether it's going to be on the radio or not is a complete sham. I mean, our guitarist is very avidly against this whole Instagram fame for 3 minutes bollocks.
Yeah.
Where we're sort of, you know, fed this idea that, like, you know, we gotta be the next hit, we gotta be the next viral hit or whatever, and not just the spiritual experience of playing shows and playing home shows and playing, and just sort of, you know, going into it with the with the intention to find joy and pleasure, not fame and success. I mean, it's you know, I mean, Converge really, like, set the scene in a lot of ways.
That's it. Yeah.
Like, you see, I'll put a video of them in the description of them playing, like, in a practice space, just to give you an idea of what this kind of scene's about. You know, as well as Emmett Kelly's performance live, and I'll try and remember to put all of these in the description, because it's really like, I don't know, it was kind of eye opening to watch. Like, you know, but there's so much. Yeah.
I think like it's a hard community to kind of become involved with, but it's a very good, friendly community at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Like,
that's what I've.
You know, like you generally you'll go to shows and you'll see all your friends there and everything. It's really like really nice, kind of tight knit community. I think, yeah.
Absolutely. It's there's a lot. I mean, it purely comes from passion of the art. So that's what makes it so. It's not this sort of backhanded kind of. I mean, you sort of do find that, like, some people do take it very seriously. And that can be like a blessing and a curse at the same time.
But I think, you know, that's kind of natural wherever you are.
Yeah.
Like, so.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Look at my notes. Alright. Yeah, so, I mean, like, when you were sort of recording Emmett Kelly, and later on you went to do Sorg as well.
Yeah.
Which was also really fun to watch when I was like 18. You guys were playing, and I was like, this is fucking crazy.
we had some fun shows.
This one gig, like Jordan, his bass broke at 5 minutes in the gig, and then he like they just smashed the bass up because you know, and as a sort of, but like that's kind of the part where like the sort of the music sort of blends with what you might be able to call performance art. And it doesn't feel contrived because the intention is the music, but the way of getting there can be like this huge performance, and like the setting can be a performance in terms of like, wow, you're playing in someone's kitchen. It sort of emulates this kind of very interesting sort of performance angle to it, I find.
I think like the shows kind of need to be made a bit more interesting. Like I don't particularly want to go see a band play their album like exact, you know, like because otherwise you may as well just stay at home and listen to it.
Right.
I think going to a show and having like more of a performance is a bit more. It's entertaining and it's good to see that passion that the musician puts into it as well.
Absolutely. So how talk me about how you recorded Emmett Kelly, like as what you might call a studio version of the song as opposed to the live song.
So I mean, our very first recordings were just done off of. We had like a little DSLR camera. It was a really cheap kind of crappy one, so we used to just record off of that, and then we like recorded some stuff on our phones, and then eventually I managed to get hold of like a 4-track like cassette tape recorder thing.
That's awesome.
And I had a couple of microphones that I'd like bought over the years, so we started just doing like room recordings rather than like doing everything separately. And we did a couple of tapes like that. I think like we put some of them out online on like Bandcamp and stuff, but it was all very like DIY. Obviously, like, you know, it's not the best sound, but it's not about the sound. So
that's what made it interesting to me, because like it is kind of a different experience. It's not like you're sort of voyeuring at a sort of product. It's more like you're participating in a journey.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I got from sort of, you know, the more extreme sides of the DIY recording process. It's like we're doing this and you're partaking in this experiment.
That's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like with Womstone, we had a bit. Our equipment was a little better as opposed to a video camera. But that's fine. I mean, like but we still like, you know, the fact that we we weren't working under a label, and the fact that we were doing it purely for our own enjoyment meant that we had complete control over what we created and put out there.
Exactly.
And we have moments in our album that should be coming out soon. I'll put a link to my band's Bandcamp, so you can sort of patiently wait until we've got the album out, which should be very soon. And we have moments in there that are kind of funny, and we don't really know how it's going to come out. But again, it's like experimentation with the recording process. You know, we have parts where we're sort of using maracas and we're kind of like, you know, whispering and clacking our fingers. You know, it's a grindcore project, but we're gonna like. I don't know how it's going to come out, but I think it's going to come out better than worse. So, you know, it's just that kind of, you know, because we're doing it for us. We're not doing it for an audience, and that ironically is how you actually gain a sort of more interest, more sort of like not loyal, but a more committed audience.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
More reliable audience, perhaps. I think. So let's have a think. Let's look at my notes. Because there is quite a prolific scene, like in I mean there was at least of DIY musicians, and
like there was the really good buildings for a big Kent DIY scene, but I think it's still going, but it's not the same as like what it was a few years back. mean, also being away from here, I kind of don't really know too much about the DIY shows that are happening. And obviously this year we haven't had any, so unfortunately.
Well, you know, I was, it was like a good thing that I was going to try and like see if I could add my fill to the whole thing, but unfortunately, you know, COVID happened, so. But some of these bands are getting back together, like Manhunt are back together.
Yeah. Like I think a scene is still there. I think it just people need the push to come to more shows and.
That's the sad thing about like that's something to talk about because it's kind of sad that like the sort of the live music scene, not just in Kent but like across the whole of the UK, is just sort of it's withering away, and COVID isn't helping obviously, and the government's response isn't helping at all. But excuse me, but it's just it's a very unfortunate thing that people are more interested in cheap drinks than actual shows, and I guess you can't control what people want, but there is a kind of strange, you know, there's no variety to going to Spoons every week and having a drink. I mean, and this is part of, you know, I think it's better in places like Hastings and Brighton and London and other places, but I think it is affecting everyone, and the whole music scene is dying universally. So. It's a very.
I think, like, it's really hard for a lot of venues. You know, people kind of. It happened a lot here in Folkestone. There was a lot of venues that would play like and put on really good shows, and then you'd get people that like move in next door and they complain about the venues, and then like they lose their license or like they just get rid of it because they don't want all these complaints kind of coming through. And like unfortunately now there's just not really.
We have one venue.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's just not enough venues to put on shows.
Yeah. Well, it just makes me want to leave, you know. And as you did, because Jordan lives in London now, which and you know, whenever I want to go see a show, I go up to see Jordan. We go and see like a band like Sleep, and I was meant to go see Infest, these other power violence bands, but I had to work, so. But yeah, it's just a very strange. I mean, we are a conservative constituent. A lot of old people here, a lot of white people here. Not many young sort of people. You get a few, and the thing about is that we all know each other. We all know, like skaters alike, and like skaters and videographers and sort of music players. They're all sort of one and the same here, and they all know each other, and they usually either like each other or they dislike each other. And there isn't really any. I'm going to introduce you to this other person who lives in Folkestone who does these sorts of things. I mean, we all sort of know about each other.
That's it.
Which is interesting.
I think like everyone in the kind of creative industry here, like I think in a lot of Kent generally know each other, like it's very well connected, but
it is, yeah.
Also kind of a bit cliquey, and
it is a bit cliquey.
Yeah,
that's what I found. It's a bit cliquey, unfortunately, and it is kind of it's like that win-loss sort of thing. Because if you live in a city, you're going to have a harder time trying to like make connections, but at the same time, you're going to be able to have a whole much more open world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of people participating in music and skating and all sorts of things. But that sort of brings me to another idea of how the DIY sort of scene kind of extends beyond music. And, And how I think skating has a huge. Integral role in the DIY ethic, regardless of whether it's musically oriented or not, but usually is oriented as well. So
I mean, generally, like you kind of filming everything yourself, and like it's just you and your friends like filming each other, making videos. A lot of people have like learned video editing and like how to film properly just through stuff like that as well.
Yeah, right. It actually teaches you how to.
That's it. It's this. The same with like music. You only have to kind of try and master your own tracks like a couple of times till you kind of can wrap your head around it, and then you've learnt a whole new skill without having to spend like years being taught it.
This is why I sort of titled this "The Power," because it's not just a power of being able to do it, as we're sort of talking about now, but it's also there's a weird sort of supreme power about sort of getting away from big society. And its sort of norms and values and stuff, and actually like taking part in something real. I mean, I get a similar experience with a rave. You know, it's this kind of outlier experience of not doing it the way everyone else does, or not doing it in the way that like big culture wants us to do. But that's not just like a night. It's not like a holiday where you just take a nice break. It's something very potent, something very real, something you remember for the rest of your life. And that's kind of what that's what makes it so powerful. I think it isn't just like going to see a show for fun. Well, it is that, but there's also. Do you agree? There's also it's also like it can really like attach itself to your identity, and you can become so passionate about it. And reach sort of very high levels with it that you would be sort of lost without it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I mean, I think you can like, after kind of getting involved in the DIY scene, you kind of transfer it to a lot of different things as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this is kind of an example.
Exactly.
It's it's DIY radio.
Yeah. You know, like. So some people will go on to like learn to make their own clothes and stuff, and just be as like self-sufficient as possible, just from the idea of being able to do this stuff and like learn on your own. So
absolutely, that's a really cool part, it's definitely influenced my lifestyle in terms of like I mean, I just finished the book. This will be the first podcast. I just finished the book, which is fucking awesome, and I just and I didn't rely on an institution such as a university to help me finish the book. I sort of just did it myself, and the fact that I did it myself means that I was much more passionate about it, and I put much more time into really carefully reading text and doing research and coming up with my own theories, because I wasn't trying to get marks and impress in the same way that like I'm not trying to reach standards of Radio 1. I'm not trying to reach the standards of an academic institution either. And what's wonderful about both academia and music is that it isn't owned by an institution, and you could sort of, and it's very similar with academia as well. When you talk about Albert Camus and his major contributions to existentialist absurdist philosophy, he was just a working class. He was just an ordinary guy, very charming guy, but he didn't like he wasn't a professor. He was, this is the School of Life really illustrates this wonderfully when they say that he was just a normal man that came up with some really cool ideas, and that's what philosophy is all about. And I can't help but find a familiarity between that and and music, because academia is not at all owned by an institution, and when you sort of look at it, really, like it's very rare, especially more and more nowadays, which is actually a really positive force, that anything really is owned by an institution. Like and it's becoming more and more democratized. Every single sphere is becoming more and more democratized than ever. Hello, Carolina. How you doing? Good to see you. And it's taken a long time for writing, because it was the aristocrats and the academics that wrote the sort of the upper class that was able to literate, and the lower class was unable to write. And now everyone can write blog posts.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a really wonderful force that we don't really appreciate enough. With radio, with podcasts exist, with music. If we were to talk about the more sort of, the more mainstream side of DIY music, bedroom pop and hip hop, lo-fi hip hop now exist, which is just absolutely awesome.
So like SoundCloud is like perfect for putting things out. Like, it's a free source to upload your music to.
And Bandcamp.
Same as Bandcamp, yeah.
And it's sort of, it does seem to be this ever-growing force of the democratization of creating content, whether it's clothes or films or podcasts or music, which is really cool. You find you smoke a lot on the podcast. I don't know what makes you do it, but you just smoke a lot.
I smoke a lot regularly anyway.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut down. So I guess like maybe a question we can ask now is like, what can we do to sort of elevate the DIY music scene, both punk or otherwise, both punk or not punk? You know, like, would you have any answers to that? I mean, I have a couple of answers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing really is just to have more things going on. I mean, obviously at the moment it's a bit of a struggle, but once we're able to kind of just more regular shows, I think a lot more people are kind of a bit more open to it now as well. Like with your experience with the library and stuff, with them being open to having a show.
The library thing was absolutely bloody awesome. Because I approached the library and I said, hey, I'm a bit nuts. I want to do a really heavy live show here. I'd like to do it in the library with the bookshelves around. And they were like, yep, that sounds great. And it was like, okay, awesome. And the guy was so interested in it that he was potentially going to help me fund some of the bands, which I thought were just like, I thought that was just an absolute treat. But because I later learned that there's a scheme called Get Loud with Libraries in the UK, in which you would be able to, in which famous artists such as Adele and Taylor Swift will perform in libraries. Maybe not Taylor Swift, but yeah, people like that will perform in libraries, and as a sort of way to sort of get libraries more recognised, and it's like this kind of so it isn't the case that we're sort of being completely shut off by every institution, but some some places like libraries and other places, and now fast food markets like Denny's, in Vain, I forget the name of the band, Val Vain, I forget the band. They're playing like a sort of beatdown show in Denny's, which I thought was all but like the people are very open to it. I think it might just be the attitude of people thinking that like there is this sort of power out there that determines how it goes. Other people make podcasts. I can't make that podcast. What am I going to talk about? Or I can't book an event. So I've really stressed attend your local shows and make shows if there aren't any. That's kind of what this is kind of. If you want to see a band play locally, whether they're big or small, preferably small because we're all broke, but do it, and these bands want to play because I'm sure you could. I'm sure if you haven't got a few £100 in your back pocket, I'm sure you can make a deal with these bands because if they're I think and this might be naive, but I think if they're decent enough, they will work out a way. What the fuck's up then? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think if they're decent enough, they will say, right, give us a cut. Perhaps. If they're local and they really are in it for the passion, they will say, give us a cut of the ticket sales, and we'll do our best to advertise, and it will just make it and make it happen. This is a lot of cross references to another podcast I think called Create Your Own Culture, where you just make you make the content, and you support other people trying to do the same, especially if they're making great stuff. So I mean, that was a long ramble, but you have anything?
I agree. I think with a lot of up and coming musicians as well, you're kind of happy to get anything out of a show. I remember playing a lot of shows we didn't get paid, we didn't get drinks, nothing like that. It was just playing. But we just wanted to play shows. We didn't really care. So I remember we made £10 each on a show once, and it was the best thing. But we just didn't really care for that. It is just more.
Just not making it.
Yeah, just like playing shows.
Yeah, right. Which is it is this kind of big misconception that it has to be any other way. We all want to make it big in some way, in some sort of part of ourselves, and we all want to be able to live off, the stuff that we enjoy. But we, that doesn't mean you should block it out and say, if I'm not gonna make it big, then there's no point.
That's it.
Even if you don't make it that much, it's about you. It's about you, right? It's about your response to the music, and it's about what you want to do and how you can connect with other people in ways that aren't conventional.
So I think if you're enjoying playing music, then it doesn't matter if you're gonna get big with it or whatever. You just keep doing as you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If anyone has any questions, as we're sort of thinking of other things to say, but we're sort of coming back full circle. We're sort of please leave a question. We'll be happy to answer it. You know, that's the wonderful thing about making these things live, is that we can interact with our audience. But yeah, it's like, you know, you have all sorts of people just like, you know, coming out with new things, and I think it's like, you know, I mean, even with like businesses, I suppose, you know, more people are becoming self-employed, which I think is awesome. You know, I think I'm a big you know, proponent of, you know, really pursuing self-employment. And you know, getting out of the rat race. But like, you know, obviously that's not something that's possible for a lot of people right now.
But I think it's a lot more possible than people think, though. Like with the internet, you know, it's a lot easier than being back in the 90s and trying to start up your business. Now, like, there's so many opportunities, like, and people can do really well. Just, you know, start up like a little Etsy shop, and then you can make a lot of money off of that. And absolutely. Just thinking about it's you know, there are like these sorts of really good processes and really bad processes going on at the same time. You know, it's but there is, you know, but I mean, you know, there's something very powerful in being anti-establishment in all sorts of walks of life, you know, and not conforming. Yeah, it's sort of as typical as sort of a cliche as it is, sort of not conforming to sort of, you know, pre-made ideas of like, you know, or sort of brain drip fed like ideas of how to create things, you know. Yeah.
And
I think there's no like set kind of way to do anything, you know. I think a lot of people are kind of with drawing and things like that, like, you know, they draw something, if they don't think it looks good, then they assume they can't draw, but it's not. It's just different. I don't think it means you can't draw, but
I mean, it applies to art and poetry as well. You know, like, you know, what's nice about poetry is that a lot of people, poetry is very, you know, you don't need much. You just need a pen and paper and about half an hour, and you can create a poem. You know, I would perhaps, you know, push the idea of, well, you know, it's not the goal to make it big in poetry. But what about like the idea that you can publish it into a book, you know, and sell like self-published copies of books, you know. And you know, I try and stress this with people. I had this sort of literacy program that I was trying to get into. It's just that a lot of people sort of tend to like not finish their work, or they don't have the energy to sort of finish these sorts of things. And it's a shame because it is this kind of, you know, this idea of like, well, if I can't finish anything because I'm not good enough, or because there's no point, or whatever. And it's like, no, you have, like, I really feel there's a responsibility to, not responsibility, but there is definitely like a kind of incentive to be like, well, just give it a go. And the same goes to like making music, you know, which is what is nice about you guys being so young, which is such an inspiration with Emmett Kelly, is that you just went in head first. And and that's what made it, like, you know, sort of, it bounces up. You can sort of feel that kind of energy coming out of things when you are just going into things head first.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's good to just kind of throw yourself into the deep end sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's kind of incredibly rewarding if it goes well, as like also, you know, I think at the end of it,
All right, I feel like we should take questions. If anyone has any, if you haven't, then that's absolutely fine. And I'm going to thank our honourable mentions, our patrons, who generously donate to the podcast for extra material, and I'm going to be doing some new offers soon, such as, like, I don't know, maybe some giveaways and stuff like that. I'll have to do something like that, and this can, you know, but there's definitely one of the best things you can get from the two things that you can already get from becoming a patron is that you get your name mentioned with a phrase that you like, it can be any phrase you like as long as it's relatively short, and also you get extra podcasts. And this is something that this is something you're always able to do, and you're always able to get like a back catalogue of all the podcasts, the private patron only podcasts that we've done in the past. And we thank the patrons that we have right now, which I will read now. We thank Oliver, who says, "Yeah, I'll drink to that." We thank Manny, who says, "Long live Williamstone." We thank Maisie, who says, 9/11 was an inside job. We thank Liam, who says, "Nothing yet." And we thank our newest patron, George, who says, he wanted me to do this in like a loud way, "By the power of Grayskull!" so that's all very done. Okay, so just hit me a DM if you got any ideas on, or leave a comment if you want anything to be covered next. And thanks for having me on, Jordan.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Thanks for being on, Jordan. Thanks for being on, Jordan. It's been really fun.
It's been fun.
All right, take it easy, guys. Bye.